Welcome, everyone, to the Pockets of Knowledge podcast. I'm your host, Desiree Stanley, and with me today is my guest, Morgan Anderson. How are you today, Morgan?
Great. Thank you so much for having me.
Excellent. I am thrilled to have you on the show. I am so looking forward to this conversation. And we're recording this in late October, but by the time the episode is airing, it's going to be February, which is nearly tax time,
Mhm.
tax season in the US. And so, our topic today, and Morgan, you're the founder and CEO of Golden Lion Tax Solutions, and you have been helping your clients for 25 years now. You're an enrolled agent, which means you're
Mhm.
licensed by the IRS. So you represent clients for the IRS or state agencies in dealing with tax issues. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. And I'm so looking forward to hearing all of this great knowledge that you have to share. So, again, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. I know people hear tax and immediately kind of get a shiver up their spine and they start sweating a little bit, but stick with us because we're going to share a lot of great information and some insights that probably a lot of our listeners today and for this episode haven't heard before. I've got
Mhm.
25 years experience of fighting before the IRS in the States for my clients. So I hope to share a lot of great insight, knowledge, tidbits, and some information about my area of specialty, which is dealing with tax debt or tax account issues.
Okay, yeah, excellent. And so I always like to have my guests start by sharing how this journey happened for you, like what led you down this path, and then establishing your company. And so would
Mhm.
you take it away and tell us how this kind of came to be for you?
Yeah, I've always had this great propensity and enjoyed working with numbers, law, problem solving, and I accidentally answered an ad for an administrative assistant for one of the nationwide leaders that really created the tax debt resolution industry. And I fell into a world where I could help people and really have a lasting impact on them, their financial future, and their businesses by performing this service, by taking on the responsibility of coming up with a solution to a problem that had been plaguing them in some cases decades. So it just rang true to me and to my passion of helping other people, and it created a career pathway for something that I had no idea was even out there. So yeah, I was in the industry for a couple of years and then realized I could get this license directly from the IRS, instead of following traditional CPA or attorney pathways. And with this designation as an enrolled agent, I am considered equivalent to an attorney or a CPA when dealing with all matters of tax. The only thing I can't do is represent somebody in tax court or sign off on an audit. So EAs, enrolled agents, pardon me, are equivalent to a CPA or a tax attorney. So,
Thank you for clarifying that because I did not know what enrolled agent meant
mhm.
in any way,
Yeah,
and what it is that you do. And so you're basically kind of between the client and the IRS or state agency in that communication, and then, like you said, like creating a solution to problems that are plaguing your clients. And so let's dive into that a little bit more. And so,
sure.
like, what type of situation could a client find themselves in? I think there's a variety, right? You did mention a couple.
Absolutely.
There's personal,
Hmm.
debt, tax issues, or business. And so why don't you
Correct.
share with us, kind of some of those different situations that a person might find themselves in, and how you're helping to find solutions.
Absolutely. So every state has their own types of taxes, right? And the IRS is very standardized. For individuals, it's income tax, Usually it's a self-employment tax situation for all the people who are out there working for themselves as contractors or who have their own businesses. For a business with the IRS, it's going to be usually payroll or excise tax. At the corporate level, it's corporate income tax. Those are the types of taxes that we most usually become involved with. At the state level, it's individual or business income tax, payroll taxes, and sales tax. And sometimes we'll get involved with county or city level sales tax situations if the liability warrants our involvement. Um, a lot of times individuals, let's start there. For for all of you listening, we all file an annual tax return to our most likely. Some states don't have income tax, but we usually file an income tax return to the IRS or and our local state. And that is tied directly to the income you earn, right? They take a portion. It's just how it works. That's how they fund everything like our education systems, our road work, our military. So it's a necessary evil. And our tax system is actually considered a voluntary system, not meaning that we can opt in or out, but voluntary in the way that we report what we do financially ourselves instead of meeting at a government office once a year with all of our records and having them fill it out. We self-report. And that's where the term voluntary tax system comes from. So at the individual level, we have that. And for businesses, for anybody who has employees, you are required to pay your employees' paychecks and you withhold taxes out of their paychecks and you hold it in trust to turn over to the government. Same process happens at the state level with sales tax. You are providing a good or service to a consumer and you withhold out of that transaction a tax to give to your local municipalities. So all of these transactions are fraught for errors, a situation where a business gets into a financial conundrum and they say, I don't have the money to pay the government what I've withheld from these sales tax transactions or from payroll, so I can't send the money in. That's a lot of times where businesses start the misstep with the tax obligation. They get into a financial crunch, or there's somebody embezzling money from the company. That's where we see a lot of our business cases. We've had clients who have suffered through natural disasters and they don't have the cash flow to send in the payment. The local and federal government sometimes give some time extensions on those obligations, but it doesn't take into consideration the lasting impact from it. If you're a contractor and let's say you're in North Carolina, we just went through hurricanes here. In February, there's still going to be cleanup. There is still going to be people whose businesses have been negatively impacted by that natural disaster. And you have insurance to help compensate, but they don't compensate long term for loss of customers. Let's say um, you are a company in North Carolina and you do automotive repair. Well, a lot of the vehicles in that area were just destroyed. Insurance is paying to replace them. So what you could typically count on for repeat customers, you're going to lose them because they're all driving new vehicles that insurance paid for. So how do you compensate when it comes time to pay your taxes? You just don't have the money. So a lot of times, I would say 95% of the time, whether it's a business or an individual situation, something happened outside of their control that prevented them from having an ability to pay what is owed at the time when it's due. So that's usually how people end up in a situation, and it snowballs very, very quickly. Penalties and interest that the IRS and states are legally able to assess when you don't pay taxes on time. You can start with a $500 bill And a year later, because of penalties and interest, it can be $800. So that's typically where everybody ends up in a situation and then ends up coming to us.
Yeah. Thank you for kind of detailing that for us and explaining the voluntary, quote unquote, voluntary. And that was really kind of funny for me because, yeah, it's not voluntary in
No,
terms of whether or not you're going to pay or not. You
no,
you absolutely are going to be paying. That's mandatory. But so explaining that it's we're voluntarily supplying the information and then, of course, paying what is due. So that's interesting way of understanding it, but the correct way to understand it, I should say. And I think that the experience of natural disaster is, very difficult. We're experiencing more and more natural disasters, unfortunately, and it's
mhm,
impacting, like you just shared, businesses, individuals, and so we don't get to just say, "Well, I can't pay you." Right? We have
right,
to come up with some sort of solution. And so that's where you step in, or service like yours, where you could then say, all right, if you've got this $500 bill that you owe, what would be the way that you could get around that? Like you're still going to have to pay it, but if you don't have the money immediately,
right.
what's the solution?
So if you don't have an ability to pay, like you said, a $500 bill, the best thing you can do is call in and tell them, I don't have the means to pay this now. If it's a $50,000 bill, then it warrants getting somebody involved who can represent your interests, who knows the name of the game, right? The
Mhm.
steps of the game. And I hate to use game because I don't want anybody to think that we look at it as flippant. But it's true. When you're playing a game of chess, you need to know which players move in which direction and how many spots. Same thing when you're dealing with the federal or state government when it comes to a tax debt situation. There are certain maneuvers you can make and take that will help you, and there are some that you can take that can put you in jeopardy.
Mm.
And when you have a $500 bill, it's something that you have the ability to navigate. It's very simple. You call and say, I can't afford to pay it now. They'll either put a hold on it for 60, 90 days to give you some breathing room to have something change in your situation to allow you to address it, or they will set up monthly payments for you. Just keep in mind, they're always going to charge penalties and interest on a debt that's sitting there. So think of it like a high interest credit card. You don't want to pay the minimum payment of $25 a month because it'll take you 25 years to pay it off. So there's a balancing act to entering into repayment terms.
But it does at least give you an option that you're not having to come out of pocket the whole amount immediately if that's just not feasible. But yeah,
Correct.
again, that's a great point. You don't want to be taking 25 years to pay something because then you're adding the interest on top of that. So now it's, not just $500, it's
Right.
25 years of interest and all of that too. So that's
Yeah.
absolutely not the route you want to take either. But
Mm-mm.
the fact that you do have some steps you can take that at this dollar amount, and is there like kind of a threshold? I know you also mentioned 50,000, but is there kind
Yes.
of a threshold that individuals like, I can handle it to this point, and then from this point on, and I'm, raising my hands up, where do I need to get assistance?
Right. I would say if you have income tax owed to the IRS or state up to about $25,000 and you have the means to make monthly payments towards it, you can handle that. You may need some guidance. We actually have a webinar that is available at the time that this is going to be released that I can direct you to that will walk you through the steps and empower you of the right things to say, the best number to call, when to call, because I don't
Mhm.
know if any of you have tried the 800 number that comes on the notices or the love notes from the IRS or the states. You can end up sitting on hold for 2 hours and then the system disconnects you. And it makes a very rough situation even harder to swallow. and even more frustrating to deal with. So our webinar is going to walk you through step by step everything you need to do to have the strength and the knowledge to effectively handle it for yourself. So check out the program notes here below the episode, because we'll have that detailed information in there. Um, Below 25,000 on an income tax, you can handle it. Below 10,000 on a sales tax or payroll tax, you can handle it. Above those thresholds, you want to get somebody involved who has gone through this game, as we called it earlier, who has played these roles before. Like my company, we've helped thousands of people go through this process. We've always been able to find a solution because there's always a solution. But when you're in those higher thresholds, you want somebody who knows what they're doing, getting involved and representing your best interests, because there are things to keep in mind. For sales and payroll taxes from a business, they can pierce the corporate veil no matter how you have the entity structured and hold you personally accountable, because then they have two different places to leverage collection from. You bring into account tax liens. They get more aggressive with threats of bank account levies and asset seizure. And this is nothing that you want to have your spouse's cousin's friend who happens to have handled a situation like this before take on for you, because they don't know what they don't know. You want to work with somebody who does this type of work all day, every day. This is their main focus for their career. Like I said, over the last 25 years, I've handled thousands of cases. You want somebody like that who has that history, that direct, intimate knowledge of working through these situations, because dealing with the IRS and the state is like a labyrinth. If you don't know where you need to go left, where you need to pivot right, you're going to end up wasting time and it's going to cost you money. So definitely find somebody, if you're above those thresholds, find somebody who does this for a career and align with them.
Yeah. Great stuff, Morgan. Thank you so much for explaining that, point where this is within your capability, you can handle this, and where you really need to get somebody who knows the system. And you're right. We're not trying to make it like it's no big deal, like this is just a game. This is very
Right.
serious, and it's scary and can seem incredibly overwhelming when you're in it. So having somebody who knows those points, it's like having the person who knows like the magic, potion or whatever that's gonna, but
Exactly.
but
Yeah.
again, it's not a joke. I'm not trying to make
Mm-mm.
it, simple. I'm just trying to say that you've got somebody on your side who has been through this enough times, that knows the person to talk to, knows the right way to handle it,
Right.
and really can be your, team player. They're the ones representing you. And so, yeah, absolutely. It's you've got to have somebody on your side that can do that, because they're going to not only save you money, like you said, and time, but the
Mhm.
frustration, right? And then, really help you be a little bit more reassured that this can be solved, because it can be very scary.
Absolutely. One of our primary areas of focus is education with our clients. You should be working with somebody who can tell you, okay, here's what to expect at the next step. By working with somebody who has that intimate knowledge, they're going to be able to take away the scary factor of this. I know in dealing with the IRS or the state, when you have a tax debt situation, when you see the IRS on a return address for an envelope that when you open in your mailbox and you look at it, your heart starts racing, no matter what it says inside. And we know that. The scariest thing for clients before they reach out to us is they fall into this action paralysis, right? They get so intimidated by seeing that name that they don't even know what to do, and they open a drawer and shove it at the back and say, I'll deal with it when I feel better, when I feel like I'm ready to handle it. Most taxpayers have this mental vision of the IRS or state agents showing up and knocking on their door wearing like a fedora and an overcoat with a gun and a badge saying, I'm here for your firstborn. And that is a very on purpose reputation that the tax agencies have inspired and fanned the flames of. Because if somebody is afraid to misstep, right, with a tax or anything else in their life, they're going to do everything possible to prevent it from being a problem. So think about that. They've created this reputation on purpose to scare us all into compliance. And it's not saying, again, not trying to make light of it. It's not a game. It's a very real situation that we all deal with. But I want to take away some of the mystery and some of the fear around it, because let's face it, it's just one of those things that we all have to deal with. But the less power you give it, the less intimidated you will be when you see those notices. Most of us at some point in our life is going to get a letter from the IRS or the state saying, hey, we have a question on your tax return. Hey, there was a miscalculation. You owe us money. We noticed that you filed your return with a balance due. We need to come up with a way to solve it. What I want to do is have everybody who's listening to this know that you shouldn't make it bigger than it is. It's just a bill. It's just a request for additional information. You can handle it. The worst thing that you can do is not address it, because when you don't respond or when you don't handle it, it becomes bigger. The IRS and the state start making assumptions about, okay, we let this person know we have a question on their tax return and they didn't reply. Why not? What are they hiding? They are trained to think the worst. So just be your best advocate, but don't let it be bigger than what it actually is.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for sharing that. And I know for me personally, just as you explained, you open up your mailbox and there's the letter, and instantly you're sweating. What could this
Yes.
possibly be? And I have had moments where I've been tempted to just ignore it, but know that I need to just look at it and see what it is. Because you're
Mhm.
right. A lot of times it is just a question like we're unclear what happened here, this doesn't seem to be adding up right, and it's
Right.
really just a request for more information. And when you
Mhm.
just pause a little and take some time and go, okay, this can be really simple if I just address it and explain it right now. We don't need to make a big deal out of this. And so I think that's a great reminder. Thank you for sharing that, and explaining that it can be very simple if we address it immediately.
Mhm. No matter
Yeah,
what is in that envelope, there's always a solution. I
yeah.
have not, in all my years of working with clients before the IRS and state, I have never come across a situation that couldn't be solved. So keep that in mind. It's, again, leading to the fear that they have fanned the flames of, and rightfully so, right? They want everybody to comply with filing and paying the taxes owed, because that's what helps our entire nation, our entire community and society operate. I mean, if we weren't paying our taxes, how could our elderly get their Social Security, right? It's a constant evolving, we pay money, the government spends it.
Yeah,
If anything,
yeah,
it's a supporting reminder that you should pay attention to where your tax dollars are going. Have a voice, definitely advocate for yourself, because we turn over these monies and they put it in the coffer and they spend it on our behalf for the betterment of our nation, for the betterment of our communities. But definitely keep an eye, just not trying to get into a political conversation, but follow the money and make sure it's being spent in the way that you want it to be spent. But it's something that we all have to deal with and we all have to contribute to.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And as we're recording this, I said, late October, we're going to be voting in a couple of weeks if people haven't already voted. But yeah, it's true. The choices that we make on these issues that are being presented to us is how our money is being spent. So yes, that's absolutely imperative that we have a say in how our money is being spent. But back to where our conversation today, and that's how do we deal with the IRS or the state when
Mhm.
they come with these questions? And so let's talk about what do you think, and how do I want to word this? What would you say the options that are available to the clients that are coming to you, or if I am under that threshold of maybe $10,000, what are options that you want to share with the listeners about what they can do working with the IRS to solve these solutions?
Great question. There are as many options to solve it as taxpayers' situations, because when you have a debt owed to the IRS or the state, what drives the solution is not how much you owe, it's your financial condition. So know that it starts there. They can set up monthly payments. They can set up payments that are smaller. And then let's say when your car is paid off in a year and a half, the payment increases. Uh, they can, at the state level, some states will let you set up a seasonal monthly payment. So let's say you're a landscaper. Well, your busy season is not going to be in the winter. It's during the spring, summer, and fall. So they may set up payments that follow your monthly ebbs and flows of cash flow. You can say to them, I don't have a way to pay this right now. The IRS and states will, sorry, let me take that a step back. The IRS has a currently not collectible status, which means they recognize you don't have a way to address the debt right now. And you always have to disclose everything. Here's my monthly income and my expenses. Here are my assets. I don't have anything that I can liquidate to address the debt. And they will put you in a formal, recognized, uncollectible status. Most states follow the federal resolution options. Some of them have a little tweaks to it. All 50 states, they're their own fiefdoms, so to speak. But most of them have similar programs to what they offer at the federal level. You can ask them, like I said, for the uncollectible status, you can offer to settle. They call it at the
Mm.
federal level an offer in compromise. I'm sure you've all seen the ads. I owed $500,000 and I hired this company and they settled it for 5,000. Just beware, you have to qualify for those programs. Not everybody does. If you want more information on that, the IRS has an offer and compromise calculator on their website. So you enter your information and it says, if you owe this much money, yes, you would qualify, or no, you wouldn't. Things to keep in mind are they look at equity in your home. They look at excess vehicles or investments that you have. So just keep that in mind. If you're going to qualify for an offer and compromise, you really have to prove you have no means to address the balance that's owed. Um, there are ways to liquidate an asset, even if it's a piece of property and there's a lien on it. If you're afraid to sell it, don't be. There are ways to handle the lien so that you can sell it, even if the proceeds from the sale will not full pay the debt. Yeah, there's so many different options available. I go over the big 10 options in my book. You can pick that up on Amazon. It's called Tax Debt Rule Number One. There's always a solution. But there is, I mean, as many different financial conditions of the taxpayer. There are that many different options to address the debt. It all, though, is driven by your financial condition.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you so much for that, Morgan. That's excellent. I had no idea that there was that many options. Like you said, as many
Mhm.
options as just about taxpayer situations, you can find a solution. So that's really
Correct.
great to know. And again, it just goes to show that, having somebody who knows the ins and outs of this really is to your benefit to get them, working with you to help you come to a solution. And I think that's great
Absolutely.
advice. Check the IRS site to see if that's an option for you. And again, you're right.
Yeah.
They're going to look at everything that you have to see if you qualify. And, if you do, fantastic. If you don't, maybe there's another solution, right? Because
There's
there's
always
always the
another
solution.
solution.
Yeah.
There is. I have found that most people hesitate addressing the debt because they don't know what options are available. Just know it's driven by you. So, yeah.
All right, cool. Well, and I love that what you shared about even if there's an investment like land or property or something that you owe and you're worried about a lien. And,
Mhm.
I think this is something that people consider like, am I going to be able to sell it if there's a lien on it? Because most people don't want to purchase something. This is like the thought process, right? Most people don't want to purchase something that has a lien on it. And so, not to get too deep into the weeds, but that there's a way around that even is fantastic to learn.
Correct, correct. And don't let a lien on a piece of property stop you from even looking at refinancing a mortgage, because you can actually petition the tax agencies to take a lien position behind a new lender if it makes sense to the tax agency. So that's something that even a lot of loan officers aren't aware is an option.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. See, another great point to know is
Yeah.
having the right team of people can make all the difference. Yeah. Good
Absolutely.
stuff.
It's like if you need brain surgery, you wouldn't go to a general practitioner. You'd
Yeah.
go to a brain surgeon, right?
Right.
Same thing with this. If it's a situation where you can't, it's not in the thresholds where you should be handling it, get somebody experienced.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Well, Morgan, you mentioned in there about your book. And so if you want to take a moment and share a little bit more about that, what the listeners could find if they were to check that out, that would be fantastic.
This book, I wrote it after being in the industry for 24 years. And just, I have all these case studies, all these cases that I've worked on. I share a lot of examples of different types of cases that I've resolved. I share how to read the notices that you receive from the IRS or the state, taking away the mystery that we've been talking about. Like, don't let it be bigger than you. You can take the power position when handling a tax debt situation. I talk about the 10 most common resolution options available and how to make an assessment for yourself of the way the IRS and the state will review your financial condition. Here's one hint: they don't let you pay for your kids' college tuition. Just to throw that out there, that like sticks in their craw more than anything when you're negotiating some type of solution. Um, but it walks you through how to look at your case from the mindset of the IRS and the state, and lets you kind of bring everything together from your position to see what options are available.
Oh, excellent. Okay, I will for sure detail the book and where listeners can find it in the show notes because that sounds tremendous. Like it would be an incredibly helpful tool for somebody who is wants to learn a little bit more, but is maybe experiencing this situation, currently. So thank you for sharing that.
You bet.
And so at this point, Morgan, is there something that you really want the person who's listening to know that you maybe haven't shared yet so far that you think they really should know? Go ahead.
Yes, do not be afraid.
Mm.
You know, I've had a lot of clients come to me and say, I'm losing sleep over this. My health is suffering because of the stress over this. My relationships are suffering because I'm on edge all the time. It creates this anxiety, and just do not let it have that power over you, your family, your peace of mind, and your business. Stand up, take a deep breath, open the notices with reckless abandon and say, no matter what it is, I can solve it. There's a solution to this. And just take action now, because the more you wait, the worse it gets.
Yeah. Yeah, good stuff. I think that it it's those unknowns. The unknown is what's so scary about this. And because we're not trained enrolled agents, we're not trained in tax law, we're not trained
Hmm.
in any of that. We think there's no way out of this. And
Right.
so that because it's unknown to us, it becomes so incredibly scary. But as you've shared
Absolutely.
throughout this whole thing, there's always a solution.
Yes. And that's, I just want to shout that from the rooftops, as cheesy as it sounds, right? But I just want to save people that anxiety. The IRS in the States make themselves into this big hairy monster that's going to jump out at you from behind a door. Don't let them. Don't let them at all. There's always a solution, but you take the PowerPoint with it. You take
Mm,
the power position. And if you're looking at getting into a business, right? This is one other point I would love to take a few moments and
yeah.
just educate people about. If you are thinking about going into business for yourself or starting a company, one of the first things I could tell you to do is get with somebody who can be your tax advisor. And I recommend a local CPA or enrolled agent who has experience with advising businesses before. Because what you want to sit down and do is plan for all of your tax obligations before you start day one of the company.
Mm,
Make sure you know them, because there are local sales tax requirements that can be very, very out of the norm. Like in New York, the way they tax a bagel, sales tax on a bagel that is split versus a whole bagel, are two different ways. Now, who would expect that? Right? Like, I wouldn't have until I saw it. I always look for some of the funnier tax laws. In Alabama, you pay a separate sales tax on a deck of playing cards. In some states, fireworks and certain fireworks carry a different type of sales tax than others. And if you aren't in the tax world, you have no way of anticipating this stuff.
yeah.
So before you start a business, find a good person who can be your tax advisor, who can walk you through everything, and think of them as you're operating your business as a member of your board. Your
Mm,
CPA, and maybe if your business is big enough to have a bookkeeper, make sure they know everything you're doing, because the time to make pivots with everything you're doing with your business is not in March when you get with them to file your annual returns, right? You want to be talking to them throughout the year and have them be a financial confidant, because you don't know what you don't know. None of us do, right?
mm, mm.
That's just one of those rules of life. But when you're getting into the business game, set yourself up for success by aligning with somebody that you can turn to at every questionable financial decision, at every growth point, and say, okay, how do we strategize so that we can minimize the tax consequence? That's what all the big names do. They keep Donald Trump, right? He keeps a team of like 100 tax advisors for all of his businesses, and they're watching every move they make. That's how people get it stuck in their craw. Oh, he doesn't pay much in taxes. Well, no, because he's got a team of people making pivots and movements along the way to minimize the tax burden, whether it's dumping money into a foundation then donates to nonprofits, or it's spending money in different ways to invest in equipment. Um, this is how all of these companies, these Fortune 500 companies, minimize the income tax portion that they pay, because they invest in other ways. and they pay a ton of payroll tax. They pay a ton of sales tax. But when it comes to income tax, there are strategies they implement to minimize it. And rightfully so. That's what any good business owner is going to do. So, as a business owner, confide with somebody to be your tax advisor and your financial compass along the way.
Great point. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I think when you're just an individual and you're starting a business, you're not thinking at that level, right? You're not thinking what a
Mm,
Fortune 500 company is doing. But when you have these people who are part of your team, a CPA or bookkeeper, an enrolled agent, some kind of tax advisor
mhm.
that can walk you through these things to make sure that you're establishing everything properly, because there's so many things that you need to do to get a business even up and running that
Mhm.
most people don't realize you need to do, let alone planning for the future income and like what you're going to be owing at the end of the year for any income you're earning in your business. So
Right.
having these people again as your team, as those that can really guide you, you're going to just be set up for success, going forward. So I think that's great advice.
Thank you. It's so funny. If you let me keep talking, I'll come up with 50 other tidbits to share.
Oh my gosh. Yes, I'm sure you absolutely could. With 25 years
Yeah.
of experience in this, tax arena and business, you absolutely could come up with probably 100 more things that
Well,
you could share.
but I appreciate you letting me come on here and share all of this because these are things that, we're all so busy living our lives and we don't stop to think about until we get the love note from the IRS or the state. So be proactive.
Yeah, and I can see that you are really passionate about helping people. It's really, you can absolutely tell. And so I think that's probably why, after all these years, you're still doing it, because you want to help people through this, what can be a very challenging process if you're doing it by yourself. So yeah, it's excellent. What is there any other advice that you want to give to somebody who is considering starting a business, since we're talking about that aspect now?
Yes. When it gets to the point of your business is up and running, have a qualified bookkeeper handling your records.
Mm,
I talk to a lot of clients who new clients who come on with us who say, "Well, I haven't filed for a couple of years." Okay, well, what's the state of affairs of your records? Well, my mom's cousin has been trying to do some of my QuickBooks online, and for those of us in the tax industry, it's kind of like nails on a chalkboard. We all are underfunded when we're starting businesses. We're scrambling, we're putting band-aids on everything. But the moment you start being profitable and the moment you can get a good bookkeeper in, they are worth their weight in gold. They really are. You get what you pay for, and when you have a good bookkeeper who's keeping track of your records, things like implementing best practices for mileage logs. you
mm,
know, you get paid if you have a business, you can deduct from what gets taxed as income for every mile you drive. That is free money. Free money because odds are you're having to drive for whatever business you have. You're having to drive every single day for something. It takes getting into the practice of keeping a log of where you're going and why you're going there and how many miles you drove. But a good bookkeeper is going to say, okay, so Tom the painter, you drive to every job you do. I need you to give me your weekly log at the end of every week. They're going to keep you in these best practices to look out for your money because a lot of people who are going into business don't realize every dollar you receive for your business is going to be counted as income unless you can put an expense or a cost against it. And that's why having good people looking out for you, they are so worth it because they're going to save you money in the long run. If you don't keep track of your expenses, that's just more money that you're going to be charged tax on. So save yourself money by investing in the right people, the right resources.
Yeah, and they're gonna know also what you can and cannot write off. Sometimes
Absolutely.
people think like, "I can write everything off," and I could all my personal miles and stuff. No, 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 no.
Yeah,
They're gonna tell you exactly what it is you can and cannot, be including in these expenses that will deduct from what you're gonna be paying in income tax. But, yeah, so thank you for sharing that additional point as well, that they really truly can be a somebody to help you along the way to make sure that you're not overpaying.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Advocates, leveraging resources as a business owner is so important. So
Yeah.
thank you for letting me throw that last one in there.
Yeah, of course. Well, Morgan, I really have enjoyed this conversation. It's been so, so helpful. I think you've shared some really great points. And again, just a reminder, there's always a solution. Love that. There is always a solution. So don't let this take over your whole life. There's a way around this. So I think that's fabulous. Is there any other books that you think would be beneficial or influential that you want to share with the listeners that maybe have been great for you and you think they absolutely need to check this out?
Absolutely. There's a phenomenal book that I've actually been working through and then reworking through, and it's called The Accountability Code by Marcy Barker. It is, it helps you kind of cut out the noise, and this applies to every facet of your life. It helps you cut out the noise and identify for today what are the things you should focus on. It helps you set up best practices for acknowledging things throughout the process of realizing what is most important today and how to hold yourself accountable for it. I've heard of people using it for health and fitness. I've heard people using it for business growth focus. I've heard of people using it just for running their household. When you have kids and animals and school and after school activities and husbands and wives. I mean, everybody heading in the different directions we all do right now. It really helps bring the household together for the common interest of what's best for everybody. It's a phenomenal book, so I highly recommend it.
Oh, excellent. I love that. Thank you so much for sharing.
You
Haven't
bet.
heard that before, so I'll include that in the show notes. Great
Wonderful.
stuff. I think that's fantastic that you can apply it in a lot of different areas, not
Mhm.
just necessarily work related. So I think that's great. Is there any other books or are there podcasts that you enjoy listening to that you think that the listener should check out?
That's the big one right now that has really had the biggest impact on me. I keep a calendar. You and I were laughing before we started recording about how we keep ourselves organized, and I still stick with my good old Franklin Covey day planner because I like writing down stuff and crossing it off. There's this sense of satisfaction to that. I do that with my tasks for my client files every day. I implement that across the board, and the accountability code has helped me kind of whittle that down from listing 50 things a day and then carrying over 20 and everything to really focusing on the main ones and then petering in other items thereafter as that list gets worked through. But yeah, it has been the one over the last year that's had the biggest impact on me.
Mhm. Yeah, I can totally see that because it's very easy to get distracted these days. And, we feel like we have to do everything all at once. Right now, it's got to just,
Yeah,
this has to be on my list too. It's so
yeah.
important. And, realizing that you can't get everything done in every single day. So, how important is it
Mhm.
to find the most important things that need to be accomplished and then working from there? So, I think that sounds like a great book. And I'm going to take a look at that myself.
Do it's phenomenal.
Yeah, excellent. Well, lastly, Morgan, if you would share with the listeners how they can find you, if they've got questions, if you want to share your website or if you're on any social media sites, they can pick your brain or, get some help. How would they do that?
Absolutely. Go to our website, goldenliontaxsolutions.com. My direct phone number and my email address are on there. don't ever hesitate to reach out. No question is too small, or there's no interruption to our day. We we live for helping people. And even if it's not something that warrants getting us involved, we can always point you in the right direction. We like being in service to people. It's what has inspired me to keep doing this for as long as I have. Um, I feel good at the end of every day by having a positive impact for anybody who needs it. And so reach out to me through our website. You can find me on Facebook and LinkedIn, Morgan Q. Anderson, EA. You can find our company on both of those as well. Just don't hesitate. I never want you to be afraid to reach out and say, hey, I have a question. I don't want to cost you more anxiety or stress. So just reach out.
Mm. I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that. And again, you can absolutely see how important it is for you to help others solve these problems so that, they can just be relieved of that and move on with their life. So, thank you so much, Morgan. This has been a delight having you on. I appreciate your time and this knowledge that you've shared with us today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, we'll talk more soon.